Welcome, everyone, to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. For those of you who are new to my YouTube platform, please make sure to subscribe. You could also find me on Spotify and iTunes, as well as Instagram at Jacob Cooper LCSW. For those of you who aren't familiar with, my name is Jacob Cooper, the host of Wisdom Jacob's Ladder and the author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. Today's guest on episode 12 is Stewart Pearce. Stewart was the head of voice at the Webber Douglas Academy, London from 1980 until 1997, and he helped pioneer Shakespeare's global theatre between 1997 through 2010. And he has coached many luminaries, including Marianne Williamson, the late Diana, Princess of Wales, as some of his major clients, including many others. Stewart has also published a series of self-empowerment books and oracles within the last 12 years, including The Alchemy of Voice, The Heart's Notes, The Angels of Atlantis, and his latest work, Diana, the Voice of Change, which became an Amazon bestseller in 2022. And, he is going to delve into areas of angels, finding our own voice. We're going to get to learn a little bit more about Stewart's story and what, really allowed him to come to his gift, similar to myself in a way where he was a very tuned in child, and Stewart's going to really give us a lot of, insight and wisdom, as also talking about, Atlantis too. So he is someone who really goes deep in the higher realms, and he's going to bring a lot of this down to us. So I am very excited to bring forward Stewart. I'm very excited to see where this interview goes and to really tap into brilliance that Stewart Pearce is today. So hope you enjoy our episode 12 and stay tuned and let's, bring on Stewart. Stewart Pearce, welcome, my friend, to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. It's an honor to have you. I was honored to be on your platform, Deep Dialogues, and here you are. It's kind of like the Joni Mitchell song. We're on both sides now. You're on my platform. I was on yours. So thank you for joining me here today. How are you?
I'm absolutely fantastic, and I'm really pleased to join you on your ladder,
Yes,
Jacob's
yes.
ladder. The very fact that I can see this beautiful ladder reaching off into the higher dimensions, and there you are, just saying, "Come, Stewart, come on!" Looking back, and I'm saying, "Yeah, I'm coming, I'm coming." It's so exciting to be on your ladder, and you can't see it here, but I was spoken to by William Blake, the grandfather of Romanticism, in the 18th century, who was a great visionary poet and painted the most extraordinary watercolors. And one great work of art that he created was Jacob's Ladder. So I don't have it
Wow.
in this room, it's in the room next door. I'll
Hmm.
take a photograph of it and send it to you later.
I'd love and thank you for sharing, that with me about William Blake. Now, within my platform, we really like to know the guests on a deeper level, why they are the way that they are, because I believe our why determines our what and our how. But for those viewers who somehow live under a rock, who may not be familiar with your work, could you just, share us a little bit about yourself and your work, and then maybe we'll get into the genesis of your story a little bit, if that's okay with you. So just kind of share with us, who is Stewart Pearce and what are some of your passions in your work with my viewers?
Mm, mm. So who I am is a child of the world. Who I am is a spiritual being having human experience.
Mm,
And on that level, I've always been in connection with the multidimensional universe and with the beings that frolic within the multidimensional universe. So all the way through my childhood, I was aware of the angels, of earth elementals in the form of fairies, and lots of dead people came to visit me.
hmm,
And the way that I was brought up was my father and mother were attached to the royal household. My father was a royal servant, and so we were living in extraordinary accommodation, if you like, living a very ordinary life, but in a very extraordinary accommodation, meaning we were living in a building that had been
hmm,
present since the 11th century. So if you're in an old building that obviously has been partially renovated over the years, that it's full of extraordinary memories to do with the people that existed there. And it was a royal palace, so there were lots of notable beings that would walk through and I would see them.
Hmm.
So this is who I am. The way that who I am, spiritual being having a human experience, has become practiced over the years is that I just sat in stillness and followed my calling, in the sense of not doing but being the next level of becoming. And the way that the universe has revealed my pathway to me, my purpose pathway, was initially through becoming an actor. And then after 10 years of acting, opportunities were given to me to train actors as a
Hmm.
voice coach, as a spoken voice coach, particularly within classical theatre, within
Hmm.
Shakespeare. And also, very eminent people in British society came to me. So, for example, my first client, big client, was Margaret Thatcher. So this was
Hmm.
1980 when she had become the first female premier, the
Hmm.
first female prime minister of the British Isles of the United Kingdom.
Hmm.
And that's gone on. You know, people have been drawn to me. I've just, in fact, released a book about my 2 years with Diana, Princess of Wales, which is,
Hmm.
if you like, an homage to Diana, but also an investigation or an inquiry into who was she. We know what she was, but who was she? And why did those extraordinary things take place within her life?
Hmm.
You know, in the sense of I answer the unanswerable and question the unquestionable.
Hmm.
And so that's a little bit of who I am. And at the moment, in the way that the "What are you, Stewart?" is defined, is that I was given the title Master of Voice through all of the work that I've done over the last 40 years in training actors. But also, I'm an Angelica emissary because in 1987, a group of 12 angels came to me. I wasn't anticipating that I would suddenly receive a divine transmission. And this was during a very remarkable time of shift on our planet, which now is called the harmonic convergence. So this was August 1987,
Hmm.
where a grand trine opened in the heavens, and according to the Mayan prophecy, 144,000 rainbow light warriors were awakened.
Hmm.
Well, if that's, you know, it's an interesting or rather romantic fact. I believe that possibly I was one of them because I was visiting a very famous Earth energy site known as Glastonbury Tor in Somersetshire in the United Kingdom. And it's known as, of course, we know it's known as the heart chakra of the world. And
Hmm.
during meditation, I heard a series of seraphic sounds. And when I opened my eyes, I saw 12 huge orbs, and two of them started speaking to me. And
Hmm.
so over the last 34, 35 years, I've been literally propagating the wisdom of the 12 angels of Atlantis into the world.
It's fascinating. So you're someone with an incredibly big calling. You connect to the angelic beings as well as the luminaries, on the planet, and you have such a pivotal role, in their lives. And we'll get to, the coaching that you've done with, helping people find their inner voice and some of the high prolific other clientele that you've, certainly worked with. I know you and I have a lot in common in a sense that we were both, different from a young age and we just knew it. We couldn't pinpoint why or but it was just different. But take me through to Stewart the boy, because I wanted to hear a little bit about you and what was maybe something that you knew was an opener of your awareness, or something that separated you from other kids. Do you have any transformative encounters as a kid, or when did this all start that you knew that I'm on a different path, there's something that I'm connected to that others maybe are not?
Well, the different path was really identified for me because of the disapprobation, the disapproval, and the punishments that I received. Because
Mm.
as an innocent, I spoke about what I was seeing, thinking that everybody could see these beings of light. And then I soon realized that there were horrified faces looking at me. And
Mm.
this was also doubly contracted, so to speak, by the fact that I found it really difficult to open myself to the subscriptions of education, meaning I couldn't read.
mm,
And I didn't understand what maths was all about whatsoever, because
mm,
I was approaching everything from a vibrational point of view, not from a literal, logical left brain point of view.
mm,
So schooling was actually very troubled. And of course, as you experienced, Jacob, there we were, these vibrating, hypersensitive little beings.
mm,
And the world was either concerned or was in disapproval of what we were feeling because we threatened the status quo. And
mm,
as a result, I often felt a feeling of dislocation and a feeling of disassociation. Fortunately, I was grounded beautifully by an extraordinary mother. She was
mm.
my she was my grounding force. She was a paragon of unconditional love, and
Wow.
all intuitively knew, but found it very difficult to open up a conversation with the patriarch, with all of the regulatory bodies, particularly the educational bodies. Because, for example, as a child, I evoked great anger and impatience in my teachers. Bless them, they must have been so frustrated with me. And then, of course, what you did was you beat a child, you beat
Mm,
intelligence of a child, which is just so stupid. But that's what took place. And when I would see their anger mounting, I would see it in their field. I would see it in their energy field. And their energy fields would become filled full of all of these dark, dark, dark tone
mm,
colors. So those people over there who were really lovely and loving and humble and sweet and fun to be with, the teachers or the
mm,
caretakers, that they were surrounded by pastel colors. But these people over here, who were really the patriarchal witnesses, when they got angry, they were surrounded by these dark hues of dark, dark purple, dark indigo blue. That was
mm,
really frightening. And when they became angry with me, these energy fields would shatter, and it
mm,
would be almost as though broken glass were coming at me. So I would spend a lot of time doing that because I literally thought that it was an animate energy.
mm.
So on 2 occasions, I was taken into psychiatric care. Even
Wow.
though my mother was there, unfortunately, was always saved by these beautiful guardians, meaning on 2 levels, a pediatrician psychiatrist said, there's nothing wrong with this child. This child is hypersensitive. Release, 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 relief, relief, relief.
Mm,
So that's what childhood was really all about. So I think it was actually when I was about 7, 8, 9, I realized that I had to shut up. I
mm.
just had to shut up because
Wow.
whatever I said was so disagreeable for most people. So I shut up. I self-muted for 2 years. And I
Mm,
have a brother who's a year older. He was my code breaker. And
mm,
we would read each other very, very easily. We still have an intuitive connection. So we don't have to speak. It becomes non-verbal, precognitive
mm.
communication.
Wow.
And what this did was this was a saving grace. This was a,
Mm,
this was a really hallowed space because it meant that I got still
mm,
and observed, really listened. And the
mm,
waves of energy, because I was synesthetic, hence not being able to read, and my synesthesia, which is a crossover of the senses, was I was seeing sound. I was seeing waves of sound, or as I was saying in relation to the angered ones, shards of glass, broken, irritated energies. And
mm,
so these wonderful waves of energy, these beatific waves, carried me in my stillness. And that's when I got grounded. That's when I began to realize this is a way. And of course, it was very innate, very inherent, highly intrinsic. I didn't really have words for the experience, but I began to really find a way of coming into 3D. And that's when I started to hear words and the
mm,
beauty of words. And I was transfixed with the waves of energy and the beauty of words. So, for example, I remember when I became aware of the word insignificant in
mm,
my 7, 8-year-old experience, I thought it was one of the most beautiful words that I'd ever seen. So when I came back into speech, I would put it into every sentence.
Hmm. That
until
was
my,
a word that really stuck to you. Yeah.
because it's so beautiful. And I remember the word mélange, that it was so beautiful to feel the word on my lips and in my
Mm.
mouth. I would eat words.
Hmm.
And so, of course, the great poets, then when I began to read, and I learned to read through singing, not through
Hmm.
speech,
Hmm.
because as soon as I came out of silence, I was humming and whistling all the time. And my mother said, darling, I think you should be in a church choir.
Hmm.
Yes! So I was put into a church choir. I was terrified because I couldn't read. But actually, in standing with the missal or the sheet music in front of me, I began to read the notation of the music. And again, it was all about waves, and underneath it were the words. And so I began to read singing, and then I began to read speaking.
Wow. Wow. Fascinating evolution. It seemed like a lot of your childhood tried to suppress or take away that voice of yours, but you didn't allow it. And so I'm wondering for you, you've worked on so many people to really find their inner voice. Would you say that in a way that your pain of being constricted and not being able to be yourself to a degree through parts of your childhood, put you on this path of purpose to help out others, to possibly find their authentic voice, cultivate that in the world? Was that a little bit of the crux of your work today, would you say?
Oh, I would think it's all, not just a little bit,
Yes.
it's all.
Yeah.
That I crash dived into flesh as a soul to experience 10 years of identifiable karma
Mm,
in the way that you've just addressed the themes.
The
And then
pain
the
into
rest of life
purpose. Yeah.
has been about attending to the themes of I will be glorified, I will honor my own beauty, I will keep willfully seeking my instinctual truth. And sound is at the core of creation, just as it's the core of each of our creations. The first great roar of life that we utter as we are taken from our mother's bellies or we shoot out of our birth canal. And there's that
Mm,
great breath in, and then from that moment, that the celebration of sound for me has always been enriching. So yes, it was crash diving in to prepare me with an identification of the major themes. Now, I mean, obviously, from a conscious, overt consciousness point
mm,
of view, all of this did not really come to me until later.
mm.
But I now know that I was feeling all that we're identifying in this moment. I was feeling it all.
Yes. Well, let's talk a little bit about the macro and the micro, of the voice of the soul. I'm wondering for you, when you take a step back, why do you feel it is that so many, and I notice this myself, just don't have their own authentic voice? They seem to be like a leaf in water. They're not really connected. And for those who have maybe lost their voice, how could they get back their interconnectivity to their voice of the soul? What kind of, techniques or ways, could people really find and regain their true, powerful, connected voice, as well as where does that emanate from? Where does that flow from, would you say? So my question is threefold, but yeah.
It's a wonderful question, but it's also quite complex in its threefold
Yeah.
nature. Starting off with the initial premise, my feeling is, my experience is that we've chosen to be part of a system that is now shifting, that is now transiting, which I call the patriarchal system.
Mm,
And all of our establishments, our five major establishments, whether it be central government or money or religion or education or medicine, are based on
mm,
patriarchal constructs, which are really all about conditions. They're not
mm,
unconditional. It's about the tribal instinct that we're all involved in.
mm,
And so we've been educated, socialized, and conditioned into doing. And
mm,
most of the time, we're not doing what we could be doing because they say so, whoever they may be. Firstly, our parents or our teachers or our caretakers or our caregivers, that we're constantly being manipulated or coerced or seduced into being part of their model. And of course, they've learned when we're children, we're dealing with people who are older than we. And so they've learned, they've also similarly been polluted by the educational socialization process. And we
Mm,
forget who we are. We forget we're constantly tuning into what
mm,
we are rather than who we are. So I believe that that's what it's all about. So, the functioning of this for me in my reality is that the doing means that we're working really from the upper heart area upwards. So we're dealing
mm,
essentially with the cerebral in,
mm,
quantifying a lot of thought, which can be based in very meaningful studies of philosophy or social politics or behavioral mechanisms within the sociology of our peoples. But it's mostly about the competitive nature of learn this to pass this test.
mm,
Or
mm,
learn this so that you can actually compete with this other person on an egoic level to prove who's right.
mm,
And that was something that seemed so ridiculous to me from a very, very early
mm,
period. Now,
mm,
vocally, what happens, which I think is the second part of your question, we move away from the song of our soul. So what happens is we get really trapped in our heads like this, because after all we're doing is operating from the neck upwards. So we become talking heads. And I mean, this is really the currency of the Western world,
mm.
which we can particularly hear in the United States of America, because everything gets really, really fast.
Yeah.
But if we come back to the sound of our soul, we come back into our bodies, we come back into our heart. Our heart is the seat of the soul. So, what I do in the world is to tune people into the fact that we each have a note, we each have a frequency that is the
Mm,
song of our soul, that is enraptured by our bodies, because obviously our voices are purely physical means that we use to communicate the way we think and the way we feel. But once we
mm,
tune into that, we tune into the metaphysical implications of the fact that sound is at the core of creation.
mm, mm. So, I mean, throughout your work, you've seen some people who may really just kind of speak from an intellectual, left brain, very just top heavy perspective, and you've helped people find, the inner voice. And have you seen like transformation in their work and their projects? You've seen a lot more of like a fuller display of their gifts cultivated, you would say?
Yes, because although the people may be quite successful, they may be accomplished. Uh, on the other hand, I work with people that aren't accomplished in the world. But
Mm,
let's say those people who you were referring to, I believe,
mm,
those who are accomplished. What's interesting is that they're curious about how they can improve. And it could be that they've received deleterious criticism from somebody,
mm,
particularly if they're high ranking officials, whether they're CEOs or politicians or members of royalty. And they seek through their curiosity something else. And because I come with a pedigree and experience which has been successful, they engage me in conversation.
mm,
And deep within the conversation, when we burrow into their natural born curiosity, is a feeling of the fact that they don't feel good enough.
mm, mm. Yes. And a lot of this has been how we've been programmed. In order to be something, you need to do something that you, as you are not enough. And so there's a lot of self-abandonment. And so it makes sense, why people and how they express themselves would be different than the origins of their nature, because they're trying to be something else other than who and what they are. I've had an
Yeah.
energetic experience in my life where I actually felt my own voice and the vibration of it beyond my vocal cords. And literally, when I would speak, normally for us, we just feel our vocal cords, and that's what we feel, as you alluded to earlier. But I literally felt my voice vibrating, inside of my deeper energy centers. And so I
Mm,
can attest
mm,
with that, you know, the voice of our soul does not come from our left brain or vocal cords. It comes from a deep place within, and it vibrates, and you can feel it emanating. And so, do you have like any techniques that you do? I mean, I know for some of my clients, we just do some sound training, and that helps to kind of remove a lot of those blockages, that people may have, or some of the tension, and you could feel your voice deeper vibrating, and it goes deeper and deeper. And removing some of the stagnant blocked energy. But do you have any modalities that you feel comfortable, to share with audience members that they could do to maybe
Absolutely. Yeah,
connect? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Let's
yeah,
let's do it. Let's fall in love, you know. Um, Before I go there, there's just one small illustration that I would like to
yes,
use to identify what is it to find our signature note, which is obviously unique for each and every one of us.
hmm,
But at the same time, I think I'm sitting with a human being.
hmm, hmm,
And so in our humanity, in the divine matrix of our beings, we share on fundamental levels to do with the essential intrinsic humanity of our beings. So when we sound together, we actually find a way of identifying who we are in our signature note, the song of our soul, which for me is a stepping into the I am presence. So we find our own personal sovereignty, but at the same time we share.
hmm, hmm,
So
hmm,
the the example that I wanted to share is that if you imagine the whole of my range is sitting here on a horizontal plane, like
hmm,
a keyboard,
hmm,
the keyboard, the piano, because the piano is really a point of identification for Western classical music.
hmm,
It defines the diatonic scale. You don't, for those of you who aren't musical, you don't need to get worried about what does that mean. It's just we know that, for example, the piano has a middle C, which divides the treble from the bass.
hmm.
So I'm going to
Yes.
relate that to my voice.
Hmm,
So if I play with the right hand and the right hand alone, you get a lot of treble.
hmm,
And of course, a lot of us do sound like this, but suddenly the whole body of my voice, the resonance of my voice, the weight of my body, the earthiness of my body is suddenly gone, and I feel very, very, very insecure. I feel as though the little boy within me that knows fear and knows insecurity is coming out.
yes.
I'm gonna stop doing it.
Hmm,
If I go right down here like this, if I carry on talking to you like this, one or two things are going to happen. You're either going to fall asleep or you're going to be very concerned about this very dolorous tone that I'm using, because you can feel my voice has suddenly dropped into my pelvis.
hmm,
But if I play with both hands, you can hear a mixture of the treble and the bass together.
hmm,
Does
hmm.
that make sense? Can you hear the harmonic balance?
Yes, yes. There's a lot more harmony for sure with those two, with
Okay.
kind of like the left brain and the
I'm not
right brain.
suddenly living in the extreme of that, and I'm not living in the extreme of that. I
Oh,
somehow have this wonderful harmonic balance. And of course, what I'm
hmm,
doing is I'm playing with both hands rather than playing with the right hand or just playing with the left hand. Okay, so in finding our note, if you just take the horizontal and make it vertical and put it into
hmm,
your spine, then the
hmm,
middle is here.
hmm. The
So it's
heart.
halfway between here and halfway between here. Yeah. And isn't
Hmm,
it interesting? Because at this point, it's literally sitting in the way that the rib cage functions
hmm,
and then the diaphragm to bring forth the reality of our breath. Because
hmm,
obviously we can't make sound unless we have the breath to
hmm,
excite the initial impulse of the sound. So the
hmm,
breath is the key and the door to the whole experience.
hmm, hmm,
So there's the identification.
hmm.
And then I can take you through a process.
Yes, whatever you feel called to share, I'm sure my viewers will definitely eat it up, and it will certainly help us to find and connect deeper to the deep inner voice within.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Jacob, what I'd love you to do is just to feel the whole of your spine as aligned as possible as you sit in the chair.
Okay.
So, if you're lying down, if you could remove yourself from the semi-recumbent position and just align the whole of your body. And as you line your spine, just feel the weight of your body through your pelvis connected
Mm,
with the chair or the floor if you're sitting cross-legged.
mm,
If you can, feel your feet on the floor, but if you're sitting cross-legged, obviously you can feel the whole weight of your pelvis, and particularly the sacrum, which is the center of
mm,
gravity at the base of your spine. And then just close your eyes as you feel the length in your spine, and place your left hand on your heart and then your right hand over your left hand, so that you identify the most sacred part of the hallowed nature of your physical, that you are a spiritual being having a physical experience. And we're going to breathe. And as we breathe, what I'd love you to do is to imagine that the breath is a silver white force entering your body through the crown of your head, through the crown chakra, and literally moving through the whole of your spine like an elevator shaft going down through your body. But as you do this, as you use this visualization, as you breathe in, feel the ribs widen and then the breath go deep into your belly. So you're not lifting your shoulders or upper chest, you're widening through the base of your rib cage. So just let all the breath go. Feel the need to breathe at the end, and then through your nostrils, breathe in. And feel the silver light, white light go all the way through the spine, pause, and then let the breath go. Empty, 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 empty. And now again, feel the need and breathe in. And see the whole of the spine illuminated with this silver white light, and then let the breath go. And when you're ready, feel the need and breathe in. And again, feel the silver light go all the way through you and expand now from your spinal column into the whole of your physicality, and then let the breath go. At the end, feel the need to breathe, and once again, breathe in. And seeing it move through the spine, even brighter, and expanding through your body, and then opening into your etheric sheath, and then let the breath go. And again, when you feel the need, breathe in. Feel the silver white light through your spine, expanding through the girth of your body into the etheric sheath and into the entire auric force field of the room, and then let your breath go. So we're expanding your energy field, and now we're going to sound. So when you're ready, breathe in, and just hum in your heart. And again, when you need to, breathe in. And when you need to, breathe in. And now we're going to open it into R. Breathe in when you need it. And again. And once more. Empty all the breath and recovery in, and pause and relax and breathe in your own rhythm. Just stay as you are with your eyes closed, feeling the length in your spine and the weight in your body. And feel suddenly a huge stillness take place within you and within your field around you. Feel yourself soaking in that stillness. So you're soaking in that stillness, which is your essence, the whole fabric of you. Indeed, we are soaking in soul. Not me soul, but we soul. So soul is within, but also soul is without. We are soaking in the soul of the planet, the soul of the universe, your soul, my soul, the soul out of which we arise and to which we return. And in feeling this stillness, the opposite of sounding, just notice how the whole of your skin suit is giving you form, and how within your skin suit are 5 channels of perception that are at the edge of your consciousness that allow you to perceive everything. So, in other words, feeling, the feelingness of feeling from the top of your head to the soles of your feet, to the tips of your fingers, to the seat of your butt. And hearing the hearingness of hearing, whatever you're hearing, whether it's the electrical buzz of the appliances in your apartment or your house, or it's traffic from the street, or maybe air traffic or air conditioning, just hearing and smelling, tasting, tasting your body. And then when you're ready, just slowly opening your eyes. And if you want to, bring your palms together and just rub them together and place your hands over your eyes as you open your eyes into your palms so you're not shocked by the light. And just feel that sense of being very present, but actually sitting in the middle of you, centered, with the whole of the universe magnetized to you, being you, your essence, your soul, what makes you most magnificent.
Well, thank you for that gift, and I'm sure my viewers will come back to this in the archives, and I highly recommend checking this out. Because, Stewart, I wasn't trained in, voice, soul training and stuff like that. But all the stuff that you did came to me intuitively, and I would just practice, simple humming and stuff like that. But I found, doing this exercise that I could feel my heart again, but I could feel it. It was just like a wet ocean. And it was just, right now I notice, even physiologically, through meditation, I know like we yawn a lot, which just represents letting go of stagnant energy. My eyes are tearing, but I could feel the wetness of my heart, and that I know my heart chakras is opening. So I encourage all my viewers to, follow up with Stewart and to come back to this video time and time again because it's so important, to live our life from a foundational place, a place from a deep foundation within, and that is love, and that is our essence. So, thank you for that sharing and that gift. And I think people, just as you brush your teeth every day, hopefully use mouthwash, you have to use an energetic cleansing. You have to connect each and every day. That way your foundation could be stronger where you vibrate and come from. Now we have a lot of commonalities, but one of them is a connectiveness to the angels. I know through my NDE and subsequently angels, as you could see in my background, are a big part of my life and my work. But
Yeah.
tell us a little bit. I know you touched briefly with your NDC with that beautiful picture. We definitely connect to it. Yeah. But tell
That's
our
actually
viewers.
that's William Blake. It's the 2 angels at the sepulchre, at the horizontal at the bottom is Christ. It's a pity it's a bit dark.
Hmm,
Normally, it's because also there's a lot of light coming through the window in daylight. It's normally brighter at night. However, yeah, we have a big angelic connection.
we do. Yeah, so tell me, for you personally, as well as for viewers, like any insight, from the angels, what are they wanting us to do? What are some of the different levels, of angels? And how could we maybe connect to, spirit guides or angels? And how could that enhance our everyday life, would you say? So give me all things angels 101 from, the macro to the micro. What would you say to that?
Well, we all have a guardian angel. That's the
Hmm.
first principle. which in the ancient world, I'm just finding a little note in my notebook, that something that came through to me only a couple of days ago. So it's still very fresh in my consciousness. I'll see if I can actually find it, because it's a really, really beautiful summation of found it for your question, to answer your question. So we each have a guardian angel, and in our cultures in the West, and indeed in the East, our guardian angels have not necessarily been referred to as they were in past cultures, in
Mm,
past times. But if we leap back into the French Renaissance, or indeed the Italian Renaissance, all those great artists that we've identified in both periods of time, I say this also because there's equitability in the fact that we're living a time of Renaissance now. It's just that we can't call it that because we're living it. But in 150, 200, 300 years' time, people will look back and say, oh my God, that was a real Renaissance, that
mm,
time, the time that
mm,
we're now living, which
sure.
means really a period of social revolution where all of the essential hierarchy of values are re-examined to
Mm,
create a new hierarchy of values that serves the way that we wish to be as we move forward through the Renaissance. So, as I was saying, in the Italian Renaissance, the great artists that we admire, the Leonardo da Vinci's, the
mm,
Michelangelos, the Tintorettos, etc., that they all believed that they had a guardian angel, which was known as a genie.
hmm,
And the genie gave them genius.
mm,
So they didn't believe that their ego was involved in the creation, that they were literally tuning into the angelic messenger that is a thought of God, that is a messenger of God. And thereby they were tuning into the inspirational currency of the source, or of heaven.
mm,
Inspiration from the Latin meaning inspirare, inspiratione, in spiritus, which means of divine influence. So they prayed and meditated on their guardian angel, their genie, and said, please tell me what you wish me to do. Tell me what you wish me to be. Tell me what you wish me to think and what you wish me to feel. I surrender my heart to you. And then they would sit in silence, and they would be spoken to by divine transmission. So
wow.
for me, that's where it really starts. And that to see an angel, we need to see another soul. We need to open our soul to really recognize the soul in other, not through the contamination of our ego, by criticizing, by judging, but by feeling the empathic, compassionate, intrinsic, and inclusive nature of the fact that I'm over here and you're over there. But when we come together, a magic of empathic, sympathetic magic unites
Mm,
us, and we're in a space where we share, and that's a space where love is made.
mm.
If
So,
we want to feel an angel, we need to feel another's heart. The heart
mm,
is the seat of the soul. If we want to hear an angel, we need to listen to the soul and the heart, the way that the heart creates soul conviction. I believe this is why Rumi said, if words arise from the heart, they enter the heart. If words arise from the tongue alone, they don't pass beyond the ears.
mhm.
And to smell an angel, we need to know the scent of love. How do we really know the scent of love? Do we really know the perfume of love? Do we take stillness? Do we detach, feel stillness, and observe what is the smell of love? And how
Mm,
can we live the communication of that? I knew you'd get connected to that, because I know how acutely aware of scent, of perfume, of
mhm.
the beauty of smell is, because that's obviously a powerful sensory organ connector for you into the world of spirit, into the imaginal.
Oh my god! I never looked at it in that regard. I mean, those that know me know that I'm a fragrance snob. I wear my essential oils, my high-end, not cheap, fragrances that are, very wonderfully crafted and, pure essential raw materials that they use. But yes, so the other side has a deep fragrance that just takes your senses to a higher realm. But it seems from what you're saying also, love is that opener, and not just superficial teenage love, but a very deep, unconditional love within is that doorway to connecting to the angelic realm.
Yes. Yes, and I mean, we all know what that means. Even those who are afflicted by madness or by rage or by hatred or by homicidal tendencies, we all know what that love means. It's just that
Mm.
those people tend to choose the darker rather than the lighter energies because of their own predicament,
Yeah.
being, consumed by rage. But we all know this because we see this with children. I was watching two little boys earlier today, being in the United Kingdom, and my time frame is slightly later than yours, being in the United States. And these two little boys, their mothers had them in buggies, and they were obviously, mamas were going to share, and the two little boys, they were 5, 6, 7 years of age, and as soon as they saw one another, they leapt out of the buggy. So mama
Hmm.
stopped, they leapt out, and they ran towards one another and hugged each other and kissed
Mm.
one another with such joy and playfulness and naughtiness and wonder. It was just exquisite, as a proof of the fact that we are hardwired to love. Love is all there
Mm.
is.
If only we could be more childlike. We're taught from a young age to abandon that child and to mature, and it just kind of causes a hardening of our personalities and just just an abandonment of our nature.
Yeah,
And we're just taught
yeah.
not to express, not to show. Stoicism certainly is more infiltrated and influenced in some cultures than others, but that's a part of it, and it's people just become cold and hardened, and it's sad when you do see that. But it's refreshing when you're able to see the inverse of that. That love is still there, and there's still hope, on the planet. And as I see behind your head, there's a beautiful heart right on the shelf, and reminds me, we just have to remind ourselves of our core essence, because Windar would always say, when you take an orange, you squeeze an orange out, you get orange juice. And when you take us, when you squeeze us out, what's left is not our egos, our jobs, our homes, but pure unconditional love, and joy. And that is, truly our nature. Now, I know a lot of my audience members would be intrigued of a big, passion and interest of your work, which is Atlantis. I know there's a lot of historical spin-offs and people who claim this is what happened, but I know for you, you connect to it on a much deeper level that goes beyond just the raw history. For you, it's a very much of an intuitive, connection. Could you just share, your pull to Atlantis, what you feel that time frame was about? Are there any parallels maybe today in what we're going to, as we know, history tends to repeat itself until lessons are embraced. So maybe shed some light on the Atlantean civilization to give more
Mm.
clarity, because it seems to be all over the map opinions on that time frame.
Well, my experience of Atlantis, obviously as a younger person, I remember hearing the myths and the Platonic statement, the Plato statement about Atlantis. But many of that referencing didn't really ring fully true to me.
Mm,
And then, of course, I read the Ruth Montgomery books, in the early 70s, who is a great sort of precursor to Shirley MacLaine, who is
mm.
amazing in all of her books.
My
In
birthday twin. Yeah.
your birthday twin.
My birthday twin, 424. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's one of my biggest spiritual teachers in this lifetime.
I mean,
Yeah.
colossal,
Yeah. Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful show. And anyway, so there was all of that around. But when I met the Angels in 87, August 15, 16, 1987, the voice that I heard. So, firstly, when I met them, I was meditating and I heard these extraordinary sounds, like a seraphic chorus. And I thought, what the? And I opened, I opened my eyes, and there were these huge orbs way off. I was sitting on Glastonbury Tor, which is very high hill. Tor means sacred hill in Celtic.
Mm,
And I heard a voice inside me that I remember from my childhood, that I now identify as Michael, Archangel Michael, that said, "We are the angels of Atlantis. We have always been with you, but we come to you now to ask you to create a temple of sound healing that you will call the alchemy of voice."
hmm,
And I went, "What?" heart. And a beam of light moved through on a diagonal from Michael, moved through my body and pierced my heart. And physiologically, I thought I was having a heart attack. I mean, the
And your
whole...
last name is Pearce,
And my
right?
last name is Pearce.
There you go. There's a lot in a name, you know. Yeah.
So, that's where the awakening took place. And like a lovesick teenager, I wanted to immediately tell everybody what I'd experienced. And the angels said, you will not. We are going to, over the next 20 years, we're going to teach you about Atlantis. And what this really meant was that when the student is ready, the masters come. So on the path of life, remarkable human beings stood in my way and said, you will be my student. One of them was a Native American elder. One was a Sufi teacher in Egypt. And also I was called to go back to India, where I'd visited in the early 70s to be a devotee of Sai Baba. But I was called back to another guru who taught me. And then I started to see and feel, because I see sound. So I hear the wave components of the harmonies of the intelligence of Atlantis and the way that Atlantis is being leaked into our contemporary intelligence. And I would see the waves of energy, and then the angels would speak to me about the community, the continent that Atlantis was, that lived expressively from between about 250,000 BC to 13,000 BC, that it was one of the most, alongside Lemuria, it was one of the most extraordinary civilizations in terms of the experience of those verities that we're now returning to, particularly as we were just exchanging about love and the reverence for nature, the reverence for Mother Nature, and the co-creative principle of the fact that we are children of God. And so we're co-creating with God rather than, going into the egoic statement that we see so alive within the world. That Atlantis was made up of 12 communions, and the communions were often around 144,000 people in each communion. So we're talking about a very vast civilization. And they were dedicating their lives or devoting their lives in reverence, in devotion, in dedication to the substance of what that communion was responsible for. So there'd be a communion of teachers, a communion of healers, a communion of sacred warriors who held courage and bravery and determination and strength to bring about consistency, etc., 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 etc. They were living more the 12 helix DNA. We're only living a double helix DNA, with the possibility in our lifetimes, of course, as we know, of going through a regenerative process where we're opening up more of the DNA within us and moving into a triple helix DNA and beyond. The end times of Atlantis, they speak of as a point of completion, not a point of destruction. That we all knew, because we were living psychokinetic processes, that we all knew that the civilization had come to a point of completion, as all civilizations do. They rise and then they fall. This was a point of completion. But yes, there were nefarious practices, there were treacherous practices brought about by many of the priest wizard scientists who started exploring with genetic experimentation and creating hybrids.
Wow.
They also had such a sufficient technology that they could fly through the air. And so during the end times of Atlantis, the 12 great communions, the high priest and priestesses that we now know as the Essene, they were able to give us information about where the planet would be recolonized post the great flood that took place when a comet hit and discombobulated the earth. So there's information like this. I mean, I could go on and on and on.
Sure.
But most of it I've written into my book, The Angels of Atlantis.
Angels of Atlantis, which is available on Amazon and many other sites. I mean, do you see any parallels with that time frame and now, and any pivotal members of our society who you feel intuitively may have lived, during that time? Are
Oh, I
there
believe
any?
that most of the significant people that we're seeing in the public eye or that are significant in our lives, those people that we follow, those people that we admire as teachers. I believe that we were all awake at that time, and that
mm,
the beginning of the age of Aquarius that effectively we began 2 years ago as a result of those unique astrological alignments are bringing us into this level of consciousness. So Atlantis is no longer seen to be a yarn or a passé mythology. It's now being considered to be a really interesting, realistic template to base our future conduct, our future behavior on. And in embracing of Lemuria as well, which I believe, the teaching that the angels give me is that Lemuria was very much in what we now refer to as the southern hemisphere,
mm,
and Atlantis was in the northern hemisphere. And there was great co-creativity between each
mm.
civilization.
Wow. Fascinating. We'll have to bring you on to maybe get more in depth with Atlantis because it's such a vast, expansive, ahead of its times, innovative, just beyond words. And so we'll have to get you back on, to discuss it further. Now, I know you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had a relationship to a degree with Diana of Wales. Is that right or wrong? That you
Yeah.
worked with her to a degree? And, I know there's a lot of fascination with her, for various reasons. And everyone seems to feel like they had a relationship with her. I think her relatability was a part of it, the fact that people could see themselves in her. But tell us a little bit about, Diana of Wales, the person and the dynamic that you had with her and your work with her, as well as your book that you've comprised recently, which is which is a international bestseller about her. So just, shed a little light about her. Yeah. I think she's a if I'm not mistaken, was she a Cancerian too? I might be wrong on that. Was her
She was a
astrological sign? So yeah, we're right in the season to be talking about her too. But yeah,
yeah,
just let
absolutely.
us kind of know a little bit about her. What was the factors that you think outside of her position that drew so many in to just be fascinated with her during her time?
Well, I received the commission in '95, so really I knew her for those last 2 years, or yeah, it was in the fall of '95, because what had happened is that the relationship between herself and her husband, Prince Charles, had become irreconcilable. And
Mm,
Diana wanted out, she wanted liberty. But she also knew that by doing so, she was really stepping away from being a complicit member of the royal family. But the way that she had been treated, she felt, was so unfair, that she also, in great respect of the Queen, wanted to be able to bring about change within the establishment, change within the patriarchy, which had been condemnatory, had been accusative of her, had been dismissive, and had tried to subjugate her. So
mm,
she stepped forward and she made a BBC TV program where she was interviewed, and that's where the famous comment, "There are three people in this marriage," came from. And she apparently watched the rushes of this interview and didn't really loved what she heard herself say, but didn't really like the rather submissive energy that she communicated with. She wanted to
mm,
find something which was more of an executive status. In other words, she wanted to find her own personal sovereignty.
mm,
But she had a very breathy voice that was a little bit like this, and she would spend a lot of time sort of looking out of the top of her eyes like this. So everything was sort of submissive rather than living through the fullness of her being. And so a friend of hers said, "Well, why didn't you work with Stewart Pearce? Because he's worked with a lot of really
wow.
significant people in the world, and particularly powerful women. And he's been extraordinary for these people, and he's a man that you can trust,
Mm,
and you can be held in confidence."
mm,
And so I met Diana through the patron that I was talking about, a friend of hers who was my patron, and immediately fell in love.
mm.
This extraordinary, beautiful being.
Yes. Yeah.
The situation was that I was invited to lunch because the person that was a friend of Diana's, my patron, was a very well-known restaurateur in London, had this
Hmm.
stunning restaurant that was that was really world famous, because so many amazing people like the Rolling Stones would call Mara. Her name was Mara Burney, so it was an
Mm.
Italian restaurant. They would call her at 3 o'clock in the morning after a concert, saying, "Mara, can you make a spaghetti?" And she would get up and make the boys spaghetti. They would go to the
Uh,
restaurant. So she was this extraordinary figurehead of extraordinary mother giving love through her
well, that's
food.
the Cancerian. Yeah, yeah, but I think also with Diana, what drew people in was just how grounded she was too, in a way. Like she just seemed to just want to be a person. She was very real and authentic, and maybe in an inauthentic position. You
Oh,
know, she,
yeah, I mean, she was completely true, 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 true.
yeah, the
Full of
authenticity was a
integrity
draw.
and honesty. But this was actually the woman who introduced me. So Mara, the restaurateur, said, "Come and meet. I've got somebody that I want you to meet." And I said, "Who is it?" And she said, "Just come and have lunch." And I said, "No, tell me, who is it?" And she said, "You'll see when we get there."
Mm.
So, and I loved her food, and I was highly curious, So I went
Yep.
along, and I remember entering. I could feel this portent entering the restaurant, and I looked at the head waiter, who I knew very well because I was always having lunch or dinner there. And Mara was like a surrogate mother. And I said, where is Madame? Oh, she's downstairs. Okay, who's she with? You'll see when you get there, he said. So I went downstairs to a private room and knocked on the door and opened it. And there was Mara and there was Diana. And Diana
Wow.
leapt up and grabbed my arm. So her
Wow.
face was here, these extraordinary blue eyes saying, "You
Yes.
will work with me, won't you?" I mean, I could hardly say no.
No.
But in that moment, I just dove into her eyes. I dove into, as you were saying, the complete authenticity, the absolute sincerity, the childlike wonder, and
Mm.
the beauty, the physical beauty. She was luminescent as a result of love, 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 love. She oozed love from every pore of her being.
Mm.
Enchanting human being, and very childlike, not childish, but
Mm.
childlike, really accessing the inner child in a wonderfully playful and sometimes very naughty way, which my little boy comes out and plays a lot. So that
A
was
healthy mischievous side she certainly had, and a very uptight. It was just an interesting combination where she just came from a total polarity of energy, and what she entered was on the exact opposite. And I couldn't imagine how difficult that must have been to live in a world just so polar opposite than everything that you're about and stand for, and your temperament. How was she to work with? Was she an easy subject? Was she, open to your work? Was she very receptive, to it? Yeah.
She was such a bitch. No, I'm joking. She was just extraordinary.
Mm,
I mean, just delightful, easy, um, committed, full of conviction, praiseworthy,
mm,
challenged by
mm,
this extraordinary hypersensitivity. So
mm,
often it would be, 'cause it had been polluted by, "I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good. I mean, the most beautiful woman that
mm,
existed on our planet at the time, I'm not
mm,
good enough. I mean, give me a break." So it was
mm,
part of my role to take her through a series of empowerment
mm,
processes, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, in finding her voice so that she felt that she could live the optimized nature of her being.
mm,
And yeah, we worked very closely and in complete confidence for those 2 years, which
mm,
only finalized because of her death.
mm. Do you still sometimes connect to her and feel her with your work? Do you feel
She's
connected
right
to her on the
here.
other side? I'm sorry?
No, she's right here. She's right
Yeah.
here. She's right here. I can feel her. I can feel her. There are a few people who have passed who were very significant in my life, and I feel them very easily. So, for example, in fact, sitting right here, I remember when two of my actresses in Hollywood that I'd worked with said, "Wait a minute, you worked with Diana. Have you ever written her story?" And this was at the time of #MeToo. And they said it would really help us because all of the skills that you've shared with us about finding our voice so that we can step forward and say, no, actually, I was raped on the casting couch by you know who,
Mm,
etc., etc. So I said, okay, I'll think about that. And my agent, my literary agent, said, well, why don't you write a book about her? And it just
mm,
so happened that I was, I don't think so, I don't think so, I don't think so, because I had this extraordinary confidential relationship. And then I was booked into a whole series of workshops in the corporate world, and
mm.
everyone was cancelled. So I suddenly had 3 months, 4 months of no work. And I thought, this is the time to write. So I sat here and I wrote every single day, and Diana was with me, giving me all of the information.
A lot of dictation. Well,
Oh,
your life is, and much like hers, towards the end, where she was able to find your voice, is reflective, where you went to school and they just wouldn't allow you to find your voice, and here you're talking about the most prominent leader in the world, and putting it out there in public. And so you've been someone who's totally transformed, being centered and having your voice taken away, to empowering and emboldening, one of the greatest luminaries, on the planet, and having direct contact with her and a relationship with her is, you can't make this up. This seems like a Hollywood beyond anything scriptural in a movie, or this is unbelievable how this is happening in one lifetime, the amount of transformation and transition. And if we could transform death in continual life after death, I think factors in our life could also be transformed from our deepest pains into rising them above, like the phoenix out of the ashes, to meaning. I mean,
yeah.
Stewart, you do so much. I know you have your podcast, Deep Dialogues, you have classes, a lot of books. Is there anything that you would like to share with us? Any other words of wisdom, or upcoming projects that are going on with the Stewart Pearce, that you'd like to just share with us today?
It's a constantly unfolding creative possibility. I mean, I believe that that's what our purpose is, to optimize our creativity full of love and joy. So
Mm,
it's constantly, but what I'm really thrilled about, because we've just released the project, is the Magnetic Voice Academy,
mm,
which is an online coaching project in
mm,
order to find the song of our soul, but also, well, when I found the song of my soul, what do I do with it? What do I be with it? And so it
mm,
really looks into the context of, well, we're being demanded of to step forward in the total authenticity of our being, to move into our sovereignty, to move into the I am presence. And
mm,
sometimes this is evinced by the formal presentations that occur in our lives. And so it's also, in part, it's about the intrinsic discovery of really coming into a point of mastery or mistresy of one's whole being, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, through finding one's note. And then how can I use this in a context where I need to conduct a complex communication process with the patriarchy, or with my child, who's being
mm,
my adolescent child, who's
mm,
being really disassociative, or I want to woo the person of my dreams, or
mm,
whatever context it may be. So what I do is I bring in the whole experience of my 50 years of working with the voice professionally, having my own voice trained, and then over the last 40 of training millions of voices, within the corporate world, within the entertainment industry, and then within the healing context of allowing people to move from disharmony into harmony. There's a
mm.
whole welter or a whole wealth of experience to draw on. And much of that has been explored within 14 principal videos.
Wow.
And at the moment,
So,
it's on special offer.
so for people to find you or to find this upcoming course, they would go to where? You have a website, a couple websites, it seems. Where would be the best place to find
There
you?
are 3 websites, but the
Yeah.
prime ones are to find the Magnetic Voice Academy, stewartpearce.com.
Yes,
Find the
stewartpearce.com.
angels, it's theangelsofatlantis.com. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you want to look at Diana, it's dianathevoiceofchange.com.
Yes. And you're also on YouTube on Deep Dialogues. You've got great videos and daily postings, and I'm a big fan of it. Certainly being a guest myself, that was great. And you're on Instagram as well too, at Stewart the Voice, right? and
Stuart
Facebook.
Pearce voice, yeah.
Stewart Pearce the Voice on Instagram, and
Stuart Pearce Master of Voice. I mean, you go to Stuart Pearce, you can't miss
you
it.
you'll find the Stewart Pearce. Well, we certainly covered a lot of terrain today. Was there anything that is on your mind that you would like to discuss, or do you feel
Yeah,
uh,
I just want to say how wonderful it's been here. It's been a real honor to be with you. I love you deeply, and I feel you to be a soul brother. So it's wonderful being here and laughing and sharing, as well as moving into the deep credence of what our work is all about. I feel that there's so much complementarity. So it's wonderful that I've met a younger brother, a younger soul brother. So I want to thank you for your
oh,
invitation.
the feeling is that and then some. And I mean, your work is incredible. It's so allegorical in a way, where you worked in the theater business, right? And now you're playing such a large role on the theater of life in this lifetime, and such an impactful luminary. And your childhood story and how you overcame just so much, and now you've used that to transform the life that you live, and impacting thousands and some of the most pivotal actors and actresses, literally or metaphorically, on life stage. So you're to me an international gem, and just someone that we just have to all be grateful for your work. And I'm just thankful to cross paths with you. And you're welcome anytime, whenever you want, on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. And you're a perfect guest because you climb so many different rungs on different levels of ascension. So thank you.
Bless you. That's so sweet of you. I'm very touched. And I love what you were saying about how, I was part of the theatre world and then
Correct.
moved into the theatre of life.
Mhm.
That's a beautiful way of describing it,
Yeah.
and it's exactly, because there was a point where 13 years ago where I made a choice of releasing myself from the confine it had become of just being in the entertainment industry and moving into the wonderful, rich panoply of mind, body, and spirit. I opened my wings, came out of the spiritual closet, and flew, and I'm still flying. It's wonderful.
Love it. Keep on flying high and higher. Well, Stewart Pearce, voice of the soul, thank you for being an honored guest. We're going to have you back soon. I just know it. Love to you from across the pond, and we'll see you soon. Thank you for being our guest.
Bless you. Namaste. Namaste.
Well, that was a wonderful episode. Thank you for tuning into episode 12 with Stewart Pearce. Stewart is such a powerful luminary, and I'm sure there's bits and pieces from the higher realms that Stewart brought in, and hopefully you were able to learn and be inspired by Stewart's path, as well as understanding ways to connect to your inner voice, and different ways to connect to the higher realms and bring in, angels, and understanding Atlantean civilization, and much more. So thank you for tuning into episode 12. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button, as well as bell icon, so you get notifications. And you could also find me on Spotify and iTunes. Next week, our guest is going to be intuitive medical healer and near-death experiencer Kimberly Meredith. She's going to be coming on for episode 13, and I am so excited to bring forward Kimberly Meredith onto my show next week. Until then, stay tuned. Let's keep on climbing and ascending, the ladder of greatness, expansion, intuition, and wisdom. Thank you for tuning into the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you same time, same channel next week. Much love. Thank you.